Good morning everybody, just out here at Lake Hawea, so just around the corner from Wanaka in New Zealand, and we've got some really nice views here, but I just can't seem to find a composition, and we've only got about 5 minutes till the colour starts hitting the sky and everything starts to kind of really kick off with those sunrise that sunrise light and colour. So I'm going to show you a couple of tips, one mainly in how to use your phone to help kind of find those compositions when you are struggling. The location I was going to go to this morning unfortunately is locked off, so instead of going there I'm going to run around the grounds here and try and find something else, instead of just going for the easy option, which would be to just try and take a photo of the mountains, chuck an ND on and kind of hit and hope. So I really want to try and find something a little bit more intricate, but in order to do that I'm going to use my phone to kind of discover something else within the landscape. So let's get to it. Now I guess you're probably wondering why I'm using my phone when I've got a GFX on site today, GFX100, and even the XT4 I'm vlogging with. And the reason I'm using this is obviously I've got a big backpack on, everything's loaded in there, I'm kind of up against it in terms of time. So instead of getting my camera out and setting up my tripod and trying to work out from there whether a landscape or a composition is going to work, what I can do is I can get my phone out and actually use that as a bit of a guide. So I can actually kind of pre-compose my image by using my phone on the back of my screen and just kind of check before I start unloading the gear out of my bag and setting up my tripod that the composition's got something to it, and it's not going to be a giant waste of time. Do I always use my phone to pre-visualize different shots? Definitely not. This is something I use, like I said, in certain times, if I'm out scouting, if I'm short on time, because I do think that one of the greatest joys in terms of photography is really connecting to your camera and using the viewfinder to find it and to really explore the scene. So instead of you're using these all week, and the last thing you want to do is come out to a stunning location like this and find yourself interacting with your phone again. So I'm not saying that this is something you should do all the time, but it might give you a little bit of an idea as to what might work, or a quick check just before you start to kind of cement yourself in a position with your tripod and then have to move to another location if it's not going to work. Another time when this is really handy, and something I probably didn't do on my hike through the root burn track, is use my phone before I start taking my backpack off. Because if you're 5 kilometers into a hike and then you decide to get your gear off, get your camera out your bag, look at your composition, go, oh actually it just wasn't worth it, I could have just taken this out of my pocket, had a little look, checked it, gone, oh, actually it's probably not worth me getting all the gear out. I'll just wait for another composition and then try again a little later, or maybe the light's not quite right. So look, little tip. So what we're going to do now is just run around the landscape real quick. The colour is starting to burst in the sky. I'm not sure we'll go for a big landscape shot of the lake here, but we'll find something using this and try and get a couple of shots off. Alrighty, so I found this location. I think it'll be a nice kind of initial shot. So as you can see from the landscape here, you've got two great big kind of pine trees on the side, a nice little road leading through the scene, and then this really bright tree which has direct access to the side light from the sunrise. So I think this might be a good location. I've just used my phone to check out some of the foreground down here to see whether I can include that. Just to kind of give it a bit more of an interest, so it's not just a road leading into a tree, very static. We've got something happening in the foreground, something in the midground, and then something in the background as well. So yeah, we might have to wait a little bit for this one, because obviously we just want that side light a little bit more just to pop the colours in the trees and really create contrast between this darker area and then that lighter area in the background. So we'll keep scouting around looking for other locations, and then we'll come back to this one in a moment. So we've got our first shot here with the road leading up to the tree, and I'm currently shooting at f11 keep it nice and sharp. ISO 100, and you got the shutter speed there as well. As you can see, quite a distance away there, and then just with the 45 to 100 on the GFX100 there as well. And you might notice just there on the top of the camera, if you can see it, I've got the histogram, which I'd quite like to have on that top plate, just so, because I can see the settings on the back of the camera. I don't need that information, but it just means that I can check out, make sure I'm not clipping my highlights or my shadows. Taken the image stabilisation off because we are on a tripod, and I've also turned the self timer on. So what I'm going to do this time is just focus stack, because we are relying on the foreground in the foreground. So I'm going to take a shot just down there at the bottom. And what I'll generally do when I am taking multiple shots that I am going to stack together later on, is I will actually put my hand in front of the camera to mark the first shot. So we'll do that now. Then I'll take the series of multiple focus stack shots, and then I'll put my hand over the camera again, so I know that those images together are going to be stacked together and they're a part of the same sequence. Then we'll focus just a little bit further. And then one just there into the background. Okay, now this is the second interesting kind of part of the landscape I've found. We've got this nice kind of really washed out pastel-y tree here, tiny little guy, up against this darker kind of pine tree, and I'm wondering whether once that light just comes over the peak, whether that's just going to light up a nice kind of browny kind of earthy colour, and it might contrast nicely against the greens behind it of the pines, or maybe I can even just get a little bit lower and segregate it against the darker the branches there as well. So we might give that a go as well and see how we're looking. It's probably a little bit harder than I was expecting to find a nice shot in this area without just defaulting to the water behind me. But look, let's just keep walking around and try and find something nice. The light's really not peeking over those hills. There's a really heavy, thick-set cloud, which is keeping everything really kind of there's not even any soft light. It's just quite dull, which is quite frustrating because you can see it about to happen and then those clouds just move in again, and so I'm really not getting the shots I want. So this might just end up being a nice scouting trip for next time. And the beauty about doing a really thorough scout of your location and picking out these spots early enough is that you can actually now, once the light starts to get nice and you've got that nice golden light in the morning, you can then just run around those kind of 3 or 4 compositions and just try and nail them. So you can, instead of just focusing on one landscape and just waiting for the light to be right, which can sometimes be the right thing to do if you've got one that you're specifically after, you could manage to find your way around 3 or 4 different locations within a short area, and actually find out that you might take a couple more photos that you're fond of in one morning rather than just the one. Alrighty, once again, thank you for stopping by the channel and watching this week's video. Unfortunately, we weren't blessed with amazing light, but I'm hoping that the tip about using your phone to help compose shots initially, especially when you're running around areas like this that you haven't come out and visited before, might help you translate better photos when you're using your digital camera or film camera. And you've got other apps like PhotoPills, you know, Light Meter if you're using a film camera, so this can be an extremely handy device. But my one tip would be, don't use it all the time. You know, some of the best times I've had kind of outside is when you've just left this in the car and you're just lost in the eyepiece and you're just enjoying your photography. And if the light isn't good, just enjoy being out in nature, because at the end of the day, this is the life of a landscape photographer. You're not always going to get good light, so you just got to make the most of it, and at the end of the day, enjoy being outside. So I'm going to chuck the long 150 to 600 on the X-T4 now. There's a few rabbits and birds around here, as you can probably hear, and I'm going to try and get a few shots of those now. So thank you very much for stopping by, and I will see you next week. Thank you.